Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. We've got a special Faithful Friday edition, a special Combine edition per the title of my show, special Still No Defensive Coordinator for the 49ers edition. Excited to welcome my special guest. He's been here before several times, so thanks for coming back. Mark Adams. You may know
What is up?
You may know him on Twitter and X as at 49ers Camelot. Also, it's 49ers Camelot on YouTube as well, too. The link is in the description for the show. So, yeah, we're streaming to both channels. Everybody make sure if you're on TED Talks Ball, get over to 49ers Camelot, give Mark a like and subscribe, and please do the same for me. It really helps us out to keep doing what we do for you all. But, Mark, how are you doing on this fine, Faithful Friday?
Doing great. Yeah, no complaints here, and life's good. And didn't win the Super Bowl, and still not fully recovered from that. But sadly, it's like kind of getting used to losing heartbreakers. So,
man, you're stealing my line, baby.
Is that what you were gonna say?
That's what I've been saying. I'm like, sadly, I'm getting used to it. It's like,
yeah.
Like we were so spoiled in the 80s and 90s, we got used to like every time we go, we're gonna win the Super Bowl. It's like,
I know,
book it, bank it, count it, and now it's like, I'm just not that surprised when we lose these big games anymore.
Yeah, I know. It stinks. It's like 1983 NFC Championship game. 1987, even though that wasn't a close heartbreaker, it still was. You go into that game with the best offense in the league, the best defense in the league, should have destroyed the Vikings, and instead they get cooked by them. It's those kinds of games are the ones that you remember. The 1990 NFC Championship game when Roger Craig fumbled and Lawrence Taylor recovered it, and just, Matt Barr kicking that field goal and saying, this is for the soldiers. And look, I'm pro-soldier, pro-military, but forget that crap. The stupid Giants, I hate them.
I hear you 100%. 83 was the we can call them the Redskins because that's what they were called, the Redskins back then. So now we call them the Commanders, but it's sort of that way too. We were up at Tahoe, and my son took a lessons at Palisades, but I'm like, well, when I bought my boots there, it was called Squaw, so I'm saying I bought them at Squaw, because that was historically correct at the time. So interesting the way those things work, no doubt about it. Hey, we got a bunch of folks here in the chat, so let's say hi before I fall woefully behind here. We got Jimmy Perez here. He's saying, yo, welcome, Jimmy. We got Daniel Berry Sports Highlights. Happy Friday, yo. Happy Friday, Daniel. Daniel has his own channel, so everyone make sure you check him out. He is a Rams fan, but he's actually pretty cool, so I'll vouch for him. We got Kenny, 49ers Culp on here. He says, Mark Adams, the GOAT. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. He actually popped on.
Kenny.
I did an open
mic.
Kenny's
my favorite now.
I did an open mic a couple Wednesdays ago. Because Aaron Labigan has stepped away from streaming. So that first time slot for First and Ted, I was like, I don't want to fill it with somebody else. And so I was just like, just do an open mic. And so Kenny came up, and so did Bryant. We had a good show. It was a lot of fun. So
that's cool.
For that, Kenny. Yeah. And speaking of Bryant, here he is. He says, hey, Ted Mark, let's go.
Talk to Bryant a lot.
Yeah, he's awesome. Make sure you check out his channel and his wife, Tony. She does the great 49ers Women Roundtable shows. Last I knew, they were every Saturday at 5 p.m. Pacific. So check those out. Everybody's just saying hi. Bryant's agreeing that Mark is the GOAT. I love it.
I love those guys, man. That's
outstanding. Long off season for the 49ers. Fire Kyle Shanahan.
Dang. Well, that's the Rams fan, though. Of course he'd want Kyle Shanahan to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was saying to a different Rams fan about something else. I forget what it was, to be quite honest. But, it was a Jake Ellenbogen guy, and he was saying something about something. And I was just like, well, if this makes a Rams fan unhappy, then it makes me happy. Oh, I think it was over the Steve Wilkes firing. And I was like, oh, if it makes a Rams fan happy, then it makes me happy. There you go. So simple as that. Easy peasy.
Yeah, that Jake guy's not well liked among the 49ers fan base.
No, he's not. He definitely tries to get us riled up and does a pretty good job of it. So hats off to him for that. He's a young guy, though. He's under 30, so I can't blame him for being foolish as much. But picking the Rams, that's definitely foolish. But, there are some people that are unhappy with Kyle, and Kyle, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we have to kind of look at him as a Super Bowl choker until proven otherwise. I don't, assign as much blame to him as some do for the Atlanta Super Bowl because, Dan Quinn was the head coach. And I always say head coach gets the glory, head coach gets the blame. I've never heard of any other offensive coordinator being blamed for a Super Bowl loss. And, if Dan Quinn had any, problems, he should have stepped in the way Kyle did in our Super Bowl. Kyle didn't like one of the calls that Steve Wilks made, and he called a timeout and changed the call. So that's what a head coach should do. If you think that it needs to be a run play, then call a timeout and call that run play. Do whatever you need to do. But you can't blame Kyle Shanahan completely for it. Now, I'm not saying, no blame. I'm just saying I don't count it as 3 lost Super Bowls for Kyle. Only the 2 as a head coach, and, I don't know what percentage you want to put on the Atlanta Falcons one. To me, it can't be more than half.
Yeah, I'm not one of those that's Kyle Shanahan can't win a Super Bowl. I mean, because NFL history is littered with great coaches who haven't won a Super Bowl. Andy Reid was one of those until he got Patrick Mahomes. And so I don't know. I mean, Kyle Shanahan keeps getting his team to that spot. And if Spencer Burford doesn't miss his assignment on a very important 3rd down, then maybe they do win that Super Bowl. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that could have broke differently. Christian McCaffrey could have not fumbled. Ray McLeod could have jumped on the ball instead of trying to pick it up and be a playmaker and make a play. That was the part that got me, though, was that he actually defended himself afterwards. Like, hey, I'm a playmaker. I was trying to make a play. Like, not after that situation. No.
Yeah. And how does Steve Wilks get fired, and yet the special teams coordinator, I mean, like, everything stays the same there. The special teams unit for the 49ers has been terrible for a while. There was that Green Bay playoff game where suddenly they became elite. But other than that, man, they just have not been good. So I don't know.
Brian Schneider, ex-Seahawks special teams coordinator. And that was the first year he got here. Was that year we beat Green Bay basically on a blocked field goal and a blocked punt return for a touchdown by Hufanga, blocked by Jordan Willis, returned by Hufanga. It's
I see Kenny,
especially the kick returns.
And Kenny, like, he's mentioning Andy Reid, Dick Vermeil, Marty Schottenheimer, Dan Reeves, all great guys, great coaches, and dang, who was the one from Buffalo that lost
Marv Levy.
Marv Levy.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are legends, and they didn't win one. So
as long as you're cool with being the Buffalo 49ers, Mark, then we're all good.
I'm not cool with that, but I just think, and I see that Daniel wrote Greenlaw injury was big.
Yes.
They win that game if Dre Greenlaw doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it makes you wonder how much that poor practice facility that we had to practice on out there in Vegas at UNLV contributed to all the lower body injuries. And I'm going to go one further and say, if you can't run at full speed, then you can't keep your upper body in shape either for full speed collisions. I don't know, or practice speed. It's probably not quite full speed, but it was amazing how many more injuries we had than the Chiefs. And, they had a pristine Raiders practice field, and we had a shoddy, sloppy, terrible UNLV training field. So yeah, that's part of it.
Well, and Greenlaw had been having some issues
yes,
leading
January.
up to that. So,
or even since December.
So who knows?
No doubt. Yeah. No, Greenlaw, sure. But then, there was Kittle hurt his shoulder, and there was, I'm blanking on all the different injuries, but there was a ton of them. Warren Burks got injured. We don't know really when Hargrave got injured his thumb, but it sounded like maybe it was from before. Clearly, Eric Armstead was all the way back to the Eagles game where he hurt his meniscus. But
there was the spot right there at the end of regulation when the Chiefs tied the score. The Diamador Lenore went down and Jair Brown went down, and so when Kyle decided to take the ball first in overtime, his explanation was I wanted that third possession, which I still don't understand that explanation. It just makes no sense because we saw there was no third possession. But I wonder if in his mind it was like, look, two of the guys just went down. The defense is absolutely gassed. I'm going to at least give them a fighting chance if we take the ball first. I don't know. I still would like to have done it the other way, but it's hindsight. So
no, I'm with you. I understood the defense being gas part, but wanting the ball third, yeah, that was
it makes no sense.
Silliness, no doubt. Jimmy Perez saying, "What's up, Ted? What's up, Jimmy? We're happy to have you or have you back. It looked like you're here before the show." Rob D chimed in too, just saying, "Bang bang Niner game." Welcome, Rob D, and also Jason Captain Niner Massey saying, "Talofa Faithful." That's hello Faithful and Samoan. So welcome everybody. It's pretty crazy looking back at the Super Bowl. Yeah, I mean, you could say choke, but a lot of the times when people say the Niners choked, it's like we lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion every time this century that we lost in the postseason. The team that we lost to went on to win the Super Bowl, except for the Eagles. And obviously there's a huge asterisk with that Eagles game with Brock getting injured. So, I mean, I don't think losing to Patrick Mahomes in overtime is choking. I just think it's an unfortunate loss. We had, like we said, a lot of injuries. We had a lot of things not bounce our way as far as the two fumbles. It's also Kyle. I will give Kyle a little grief for, again, maybe not running the ball as much as a lot of us would have liked to have seen. But I'm definitely not a fire Kyle person. That's sort of where this all started. The fire Kyle Shanahan. I think that's a little extreme and a little unrealistic, obviously. Jed's pretty happy with Kyle. But I would like to see him learn from his mistakes. I saw an interesting article today, not long before the show. We went live here. Grant Cohn posted an article, and he said, could the Niners make themselves better by trading Christian McCaffrey? And of course, he had very few likes and tons of comments of people like, oh, slow day and clickbait. No, what do you think he should be fired? And, there's a lot of hate whenever, anytime you talk about moving Christian McCaffrey with good reason in some ways. But his whole point was at least the premise made sense, which was, we got Christian McCaffrey because Jimmy G is limited. And no matter what you do with a limited quarterback, whatever weapons you give him and however good the O-line is, that quarterback's always going to hold you back. So you have a Christian McCaffrey can help compensate for that. But Brock Purdy is not limited. And so therefore you give him a good offensive line, which he hasn't really had. Maybe that could make up for what Christian McCaffrey does with some lesser running backs, but he has more time to hit our other weapons like Kittle and Debo and Ayuk and Jennings and Juszczyk and, that kind of thing. Plus, if you trade, I guess that was the sort of the trade was McCaffrey for O-line essentially. So, anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
I don't think I'd be crazy about trading the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. Gosh, I know running backs tend to hit a wall and go down quickly, but McCaffrey's not really showing any sign of that. And in my thinking, to me, is, I wonder if in another couple of years, if they might start using him in the slot more. I don't know that, but I just wonder to kind of preserve his career some more. But yeah, at this point, I definitely wouldn't trade him. I think they have to go into 2024, saying, all right, we're bringing everybody back, for the most part, and we're going to try and win this. And then next year, in the off season, just at that point, see kind of where everything stands. But no, I wouldn't be crazy about that.
I hear you 100%. You mentioned slot receiver. You might actually look at a late round flyer on a different McCaffrey, Luke McCaffrey, who I guess played a little QB. In the last couple of seasons, he's been playing receiver, and he's got 1,700 yards and 19 TDs. And there's some thought that might be a good later round value for the 49ers to bring him in potentially.
Yeah, and he met with the team at the combine, so
nice.
That's somebody they've talked to.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of people are talking about Brendan Rice and Frank Gore Jr. as well too, as other kind of Niners legacy. Well, Rice and Gore legacy, and McCaffrey obviously would be playing with his brother, which would be pretty cool. While we're talking about brothers, there's been some thought that the Chargers might release Joey Bosa. What do you think about having an all Bosa, starting edge unit?
I'd love it. I just don't see how they would pull that off financially with salary cap. Next, I think that they're going to be fine this season. They'll be able to manipulate some things, restructure some contracts. Next year, I think it's going to be more challenging, though. And so once Brock Purdy is starting to be paid, boy, I think it's going to be tough. So I'd love to get Joey Bosa or some of these other free agents, that are out there. I find it difficult to believe that they'll be able to pull that off.
Yeah, I've been saying to people who ask me, like, it would have to be a hell of a discount, not just because of cap reasons, but just because of, even if we had the cap space, I wouldn't want to use a lot on Joey because of his injuries. It doesn't seem to be very available anymore. Maybe he'll change that. Maybe playing with Nick would fix that. But I wouldn't want to be banking on that myself personally. Carcast in the house. He just hit 500 subs recently. He has his own channel, so check him out, everybody. Saying sup. We also got Great One 765 in the house saying CMC ain't going nowhere. Laughing his A off. Possible moves would be Armstead, Juice, or Kittle.
Yeah, I just released a 49ers Web Zone mailbag Wednesday, and that question was asked a couple of different times. And again, I find it hard to believe that they're going to trade anybody this offseason. That goes for George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, Eric Armstead, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. I think that the position that they're in lends itself to at least one more all-in, let's go for it kind of season. So I think that they're more likely to do a Bosa deal, like bring in somebody like Joey Bosa, than they are to trade one of their stars, unless they're seeing that, man, Deebo just really isn't the same. He's lost a step. Let's strike while the iron's hot and move him. Unless they're seeing something behind the scenes that we're not seeing, I wouldn't expect any of those guys to be traded this offseason.
Makes sense. If I was moving anyone, it would probably be Armstead, just because of his huge salary cap number. I think Deebo, I still believe in Deebo, regardless of what we've seen recently, which has not been as good. But it all just depends on his offseason. We all know he has a proclivity to, gain a little weight in the offseason. And so if he can fight that and stay in good shape, I think he's still got plenty left in the tank. since he hasn't really had any serious injuries, right? Like what I would call serious, like ACL, Achilles, patellar tendon, quad tear. Those seem to be my big 4 killers for lower body injuries.
Yeah.
Everybody's just saying hi in here real quick. Great one says, get rid of Juice. Oh, get rid of Juice. We're playing fullback 7 mil. We can probably get Jaheim Bell, fullback tight end, undrafted. Well, he has a $7 million cap hit this season, but really we're paying him 5 mil. And it's just backloaded. And so it looks like 7 mil this year, but it's only because a different year we paid him 3 mil, respectively. But yeah, indeed, this would be the time to make a move because we could get a lot of that money back. But I feel like we tried with Jack of all trades. I'm blanking on his name. Jack from Oregon State last year.
Coletto.
Coletto, thank you. And so, maybe we should have taken the guy from North Dakota State who became a Dallas Cowboy. Blanking on his name too, the fullback. But bottom line is, I don't think we have a suitable replacement for Juice. Dwelly has filled in there some, but Dwelly is not nearly the blocker that Juszczyk is. Let's be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
Got Cosmo in the house saying I'd try to unload some high-priced players, Debo Kittle, Armstead, Hargrave, if they can. I mean, there's definitely been some noise about that. Wasn't it Mike Silver who said there might be some recent impact players affected? And a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Mike Silver, he's so connected to the team," and I don't know. Mike and I have had our differences. He blocked me for a minute, and I got him to unblock me during training camp. I went down, and he was on the field, and I was like, "Hey, Mike." He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Big fan." I shook his hand. I said, "Hey, Ted H6." He's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you blocked me on Twitter." It's like, all right. What did he say? He said something like, "Oh, you said something that was calling my journalistic integrity into question." So I promise I'll be better if you unblock me. He said, "All right, what's your
So
handle?"
he remembered, because he blocked me a long time ago. I think it was 2015 or something like that when he was saying that, who was that guy that was the offensive coordinator for the Bengals? Hugh, crap, I forgot his name. But anyway, he was saying that he's going to be the next head coach of the 49ers, and then it didn't happen. Chip Kelly became the next head coach. And so all I said was, "Hey, what happened to the Hugh thing?"
Hugh Jackson.
Hugh Jackson, yeah.
H-U-E too. It's a funny way to spell. Usually Hugh is H-U-G-H, but he's like color hue. H-U-E.
Right, yeah. And so all I did was say, "Hey, what happened to that?" And then he blocked me. So I guess he must have thought I was questioning his journalistic integrity, which I was just asking. But he's not the only one. Tim Kawakami blocked me long time ago, and I have no reason. I have no understanding why, because I don't remember saying.
He blocked me. It was during the same training camp that he blocked me. Like he blocked me early in camp, and this was late in camp. And the thing that made it cool is it was the day when all the content creators sat together. Like most of the time, Brad Graham sat in a different section, and he was there, and Eric Crocker was there, and and they're like, "Oh," and Raj or somebody was like, "Hey Ted, there's Mike Silver." I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna go introduce myself." Like, what? I'm like, "Yeah, you bet." We had been arguing something about I forget what we were arguing about, but I basically went back and forth with him, and he was kind of being condescending to me the whole time. And then finally at the end, I'm like, "All right, I'm be condescending back." And then then he blocked me on the time. So
that's funny.
Yeah. But so that's why it's probably fresh in his mind. I'm sure a little while later he'd be like, who are you? So not like I'm any kind of big shot. So see here. This year is the last dance. It is the last dance before we pay young Brock Purdy, that's for sure. I don't know if it's the last dance period. If he could make the same leap between 2023 and 2024 is what he made from 2022 to 2023, then you could pay him like Patrick Mahomes and all these top guys, and that's what he'd be worth in this marketplace. I mean, it may not even be that big of a leap to be up there. I mean, he had a hell of a season. He was throwing the ball deep. He was making long runs.
With no off season.
Yeah, but yeah, doing mostly rehab from the UCL. So, yeah, but this is the last best chance, the last chance with, the Avengers around him. Let's say that. I mean, that's pretty much undeniable. Oh no, Bryant. Well, you're a special teams guy, Bryant. You gotta love Taybor Pepper. He's a great social media follow too. Like, plus he's a hell of a long snapper, and he's good on special teams. Like he had at least one time where he downed the ball right on the 1 yard line. I remember, as like sometimes the center's the first guy down rather than the gunners. What do you think about Taybor Pepper, Mark?
I like him. I think that he does his job well, and when you have a long snapper that you don't hear about often, I think that's a good thing. That means he's not putting the ball on the ground; he's putting it right where it needs to be. So,
yeah,
I don't have any issues with him.
So this is it. He says we need someone who can multitask. He says you only long snap. Well, I mean, Jake Moody is supposed to only kick, so
right.
He loves Jake Moody. It's like I had to get that jab in there. I won't go too far with it, Bryant, but you know where I'm going. At least Taybor does one thing well. Let's say that.
Yeah, remember Brian Jennings?
And honestly, I have faith that Moody will be better this year, and he will continue to improve.
I think so too.
I'm not like a Moody hater, but I don't think there's a bigger Moody lover than Brian. Have you ever seen his overlay on his show? At least, he is 4 pictures of Jake Moody. So that's amazing. 2 from
maybe
Michigan.
Tracy Sandler. She probably loves Jake Moody more than Bryant does.
Oh, we got to put him in the octagon and find out. see how far it really goes in a death match. $5 million is still too much. This is for juice. We're saying $5 million because I was saying $5 million AAV rather than the $7 million hits we're seeing the next 2 years. Well, I mean, Mark, I don't know if you want to talk about. I have a sort of thing I've said about this before, which is like $5 million is too much for the way we use Juice, but it's not too much for what he brings to the table. Like, we're not overpaying him; we're underusing him. That's in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he needs to touch the ball more as a receiver, as a runner. I think that we see that whenever they get the ball to Kyle Juszczyk in whatever way, he usually does something with it. Now, is it because they rarely use him, and so when he does, he kind of catches the defense off guard? Or is it because he's just that effective? I don't know, but
that's a good point.
I would like to see him get the ball more than he does right now.
Well, that's kind of the point I like to make with people when they're like, oh, well, Purdy only threw this many times. If he threw this many plus X, and he would have however many yards plus X or, percentage, whatever. And it just doesn't work quite that way because when you don't throw very often like we don't, then when we do throw, they're not ready for it the same way as they're ready for Mahomes to throw because they throw more than any other team on the Chiefs. So, yeah. Kenny says Poe for fullback. Well, Poe got released before the season, early in the season, or I think it was before the season, 53-man roster. And I haven't heard his name since, so I don't think he's on the roster. But maybe we could bring him back. I haven't heard of him being signed anywhere else. So I don't know. But last I knew we released him. I don't think he's on a team as far as I know. But if you want to look it up.
Yeah, I just typed his name into Pro Football Reference, and he's not even coming up. So
yeah, Jason Poe.
Oh wait, hang on. I think I misspelled it. I don't know how I misspelled that though.
So there's the Hugh Jackson, and for us old heads, you remember on old TVs, like the early color TVs, there was like hue and contrast and vertical hold, all these different adjustments. and this TV would get all screwy if you got him out of adjustment. Nowadays, these young punks, everything self-adjusts. You don't know what.
This says that the Eagles signed Jason Poe to a reserve future contract back in January. So, but on his profile it says Team Philadelphia Eagles, and then in parentheses, not with team. So I'm not really sure what that means. But
that would be heartbreaking if they were able to do something with him. I just can't imagine him cracking. If he can't crack our O-line, how can he crack? I mean, maybe they're going to use him as a fullback, though. Maybe they will.
Yeah.
And this sort of like Ricard type mold, like the Ravens had. So I hope not. I mean, I hope so for him. I hope not because of the Eagles part of it. That's sort of the.
Yeah.
Brian says he also coached at UOP in Stockton, Hugh Jackson. Interesting. Bryant lives out in Stockton, so he knows that area better than most. 49ers need to get younger and faster. Absolutely.
Yep, I do agree with that.
No doubt about it. We are aging out. We got, Trent Williams is old. Eric Armstead's old. Kittle's starting to get old. Gibson is really old. He's like 34, or he will be 34. I don't know if he'll be back, though. He's a free agent. So we thought he was going to retire last year, so maybe he'll retire this year.
Yeah, I think all you have to do is go back to the first half of that Green Bay game, the first half of that Detroit game, and you can see that the 49ers definitely need to get faster on defense for sure.
And while we're talking about defense, what do you think we should do at linebacker?
Well, originally I reached out to an orthopedic surgeon about Dre Greenlaw's injury, and he said that for an NFL linebacker, it's a 9 to 12 month thing. And so 9 months would put Greenlaw back in November, I think. But I've seen some, and he did say that there are some newer procedures and recovery type things that can allow for a guy to get back sooner. And
like minimally invasive surgery type of thing.
Yeah, and he referenced Aaron Rodgers and who was somebody from the Rams, one of their running backs.
Yeah, Cam Akers.
Yeah, and so since then, I've seen some other orthopedic guys saying, hey, 6 months, he should be good to go. So
Dr. Pondia say that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I think that it's possible that he could be back for training camp. It's just, what's he going to be like? I remember when Michael Crabtree had that injury, and he wasn't a speedster. And so I don't remember it like really affecting him in a huge way. But for Greenlaw, he relies on that speed a lot. And so I'm curious how it's going to affect him. But I'd love to see him bring back Azeez Al-Shire. I don't know if that's going to happen, but
it'll be expensive.
Yeah, it's going to come down to how do they see D. Winters and Jalen Graham. If they're high on them, like it seemed like they were this past season during training camp, then I think maybe they'll roll with those young guys. But Jalen Graham, he barely even dressed on game day. D. Winters, he didn't play a ton, and when he did, it was kind of like, oh man, hopefully whoever was out with an injury could hurry up and get back in there. So that's a little bit of a concern, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And for people who don't know what I was talking about, minimally invasive, like in the old days for, to open up your ankle to do the Achilles, they would have like a long 2-3 inch incision. And nowadays you can, cut that in half or even a third. And there are ways to do the procedure through a smaller incision. And then that way you have a faster recovery time and less chance of infection and just better result overall in these fast recoveries. But what I will say about the 6 month people, like Cam Akers, Rams running back, came back 6 months. We were all like, oh my God, I've never heard of anything like this. This is incredible. Blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, he's never been the same since.
Yeah.
So, and Aaron Rodgers supposedly came back at 6 months, but come on, who are we kidding? The guy didn't even play a game. What do we know? We don't know anything about what he came back.
I know.
He hasn't been tackled, that's for sure. At least not on camera. And I doubt in practice either. So did they really come back? I don't know. So I think you got to kind of plan for Dre Greenlaw to be out this whole season. And then isn't he a free agent at the end of the season? So I think you got to move on, and you got to, which is terrible to say because he and Fred were the two best linebackers in the NFL. And some days Dre was the better of the two. A lot of days, maybe half the days, I mean, you can make an argument that Dre is playing every bit as well as Fred.
Yeah.
Especially because it's different, because he's more of a thumper and enforcer, gets more interceptions. But I would love to get Azeez Al-Shire. I would love to draft and maybe get a veteran. I noticed Levante David is available as a free agent from the Bucks. I think he's still a pretty good corner who can do everything. He can cover and he can tackle. He's a good all-around inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker. So, but I think Jalen Graham and D Winters, they could be fine. I just don't think it'll be this year, or at least not to start, the 2024 season. So I'd love to see at least some kind of a veteran in the meantime. And if Dre comes back and we got Azeez, then great. Then you trade one, if they're both even still under contract at that point. But I'd rather have that problem than oh shoot, we thought D Winters and Jalen Graham were ready and they're not, and now we're trading at the trade deadline after we've been missing a linebacker for 8 games, the first 8 games of the 2024 season.
Yeah,
so, interesting. So here, Kenny is saying Moody had the most extra points in the league and missed less kicks than Justin Tucker. But how many kicks did he take, Kenny? And how many kicks did Justin Tucker take? That's the question, because the raw number of misses is not as important as the percentage of misses. Just like with passes completed, you could have more incompletions if you're throwing the ball way more often and you got more TDs and more yards to go with it. And I don't mind a few more incompletions. And Justin Tucker had a down year. Let's be honest. Justin Tucker did not have a Justin Tucker year either. So, but I love it. I love that the Culp clan is now all Team Moody. It's not just Bryant. Kenny's gonna go. Kenny's gonna go into the death match against Bryant and against Tracy Sandler. It's gonna be a 3-way duel. We just have to make sure that they don't collaborate against Tracy and go 2-on-1. That wouldn't be fair. So, what else we got? I know. Also, we're running short on time here. We had talked about trying to do a quick show today. So let's go through a few of the comments, see if we can get caught up, and then see about wrapping up here pretty soon. Cosmo said 49ers really need to be discussing OC. Tired of Kyle's mismanaging game situations.
He's the best play caller in the league, so that's not going to happen. But it does. Cosmo makes an interesting statement there. Should Kyle have someone who helps with game management type situations? And maybe he does, but maybe he just gets so locked in that he just doesn't really listen. I don't really know how that all is working, during the game, but
yeah, he needs someone to say, run the damn ball, Kyle.
Yeah. Or let's kick here, not take the ball first.
That's a big one for sure. No doubt about it. Everybody's just saying, hi, I like Raymond Johnson III. Anyone else? Not familiar. Tell us all about him. Got Andrew Martinez in the house saying, what's up, Ted? Not much, Andrew. Welcome. Better now that you're here. Thanks for being here. Cosmo says, sign Azeez, restructure Greenlaw out of year. I like it. I think it's smart, to have more than you need. Kenny says 60 out of 61 extra points. Problem is, the extra point he missed in the game against the Rams, where he also missed a field goal. And I think that was the difference in the game. So,
yeah,
not ideal. Not ideal. Can I get a TED salute? Absolutely, Andrew. Here you go. Salute to you. Sorry, I used to be better about doing that. I've been getting out of shape. Stats don't tell the whole story. I mean, Bryant, I am one of the biggest people to say that stats can be misleading without context. So I tried to provide a little about the Justin Tucker situation. But no, yeah, for sure. Stats, they say like there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics, because they can be skewed a lot of different ways depending on what you're trying to prove or disprove. Justin Tucker, 86, Moody, 84. So how many game winners did Justin Tucker miss? No, it's probably tough to look up. That one against the Browns will haunt us for a long time, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And the block, in the Super Bowl was obviously not ideal. And there were misses in the Lions and also Packers as well too. If I recall, at least one of those games. I know the Lions, he missed one right before the half. I remember it was like, oh, we're gonna score going into the half, and then we're gonna score coming out of the half. Everything's gonna be hunky dory. We're fine. I was trying to talk someone off the ledge in the first half via text, one of my neighbors here, and and then Moody missed the field goal to go into halftime, and then we went 3 and out coming into the second half against Lions. And I was like, oh no, I'm starting to worry. I'm like, maybe Kyle will finally invest in O-line. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, we can hope.
One can only hope, no doubt. Everybody's just saying hi. Rookie of the year, pretty great. Who's rookie of the year?
No, he's saying rookie year, pretty great.
Oh, for Moody. Okay. Yeah, I mean, overall percentages, yeah. It's just he was just like perfect, and then bad, and perfect, bad. And it's just like, I don't know. I'd like the bad a little more interspersed through it and not like these big stretches.
Well, and that's why I'm not really worried about Jake Moody, because rookie kickers traditionally struggle. And he was pretty good for a rookie. So, yeah, he had some misses. The game winner, the block in the Super Bowl, that final Rams game. But again, he was a rookie, and I'm not too concerned, because I think that he performed better than the average rookie kicker. So,
absolutely, it's just that the average rookie kicker isn't drafted in the 3rd round, and that's where the rub is. With Moody, his expectations were sky high based off of that. It makes it very difficult. But I remember I had Brian Peacock on, and he said, Ted, kickers are reverse running backs. And I was like, huh? And he said, yeah, if you think of every great kicker you've ever known, they're all in the like mid to late 30s. And if you think about running backs, they're lucky to even play into their 30s. And so I'm like, wow, that's a great analogy, Brian. And so I'll always give him credit for that one. Cleveland game, the early time travel there. It was raining. It was windy too. Absolutely. It was not ideal conditions by any stretch, but he missed 2 in that game though. Let's remember, it wasn't just the game winner that he missed. He missed one for that to be the game winner. So otherwise we would have been ahead. Moody missed in Browns and Vikings game. Yeah. And Vikings was indoors. I get it. He slipped in practice and whatever. He's kind of slipped a little during the game. Yeah, I mean, he's not terrible. I like him. I can see why some people love him. I can see why some people are less fond of him, and I'm more in the middle. I would say middle plus. I like him. I feel like Mark. I feel good about next year and moving forward. But yeah, I think we've pretty much covered what we wanted to coming in. Was there anything you wanted to go over, Mark, that I didn't?
Well, we didn't talk about the defensive coordinator search. Matt Barrows tweeted that they interviewed new Raider safeties coach Gerald Alexander earlier today. So that's another name. I think they've interviewed Alexander, Daniel Bullocks, Dave Merritt, Nick Sorensen, and Brandon Staley. I don't know about you, but I'm not really on the Brandon Staley train, not because of his head coaching blunders, but really more because he only was a defensive coordinator for one season. They were really good. He got this job, and now, I mean, here the Rams had an opening at defensive coordinator, and they decided not to bring him back. And so I'm more concerned about that than how he was as a head coach. If I had my way among the ones that they've interviewed so far, Dave Merritt's really intriguing to me, especially because of that Kansas City defense. Daniel Bullock's, I think that might be an interesting thing, but I have a feeling they're going to go in-house. And worked for Robert Saleh, worked for DeMeco Ryans. Maybe it would work for Daniel Bullock's or Nick Sorensen, but it's just hard to know. It's hard to know how good these guys are going to be because we don't see them. And, all we can say is, okay, Daniel Bullock's works with the D-backs, and the secondary was better this season than they've been in a while. So does that mean that he's good at his job or what? But I don't know. It's a hard one, but I would pull for Merritt. And if he doesn't get it, then I probably would say Bullock's and then Sorensen. I don't know anything about Gerald Alexander, but Brandon Staley would probably be at or near the bottom on my list.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's funny. I picked that picture of Dave Merritt, and I said, "Is Chiefs Dave Merritt the answer?" There's some things I like about him, especially the fact that he, at least in practice, has schemed against Mahomes. And so if we were to run into the Chiefs in the Super Bowl next year again, which is looking, at least right now, you got to figure they're the odds-on favorite to get there from the AFC, then that could be helpful. Plus, I just like the way he got on there and was kind of like no nonsense about the Super Bowl, about Kittle, about Ayuk, about, just about what's going on. And sort of like basically saying, yeah, the 49ers fired Wilkes, but it wasn't necessarily from the Super Bowl. It was basically an accumulation. It takes a while for a divorce to happen, and it's not usually over just one game. Right. And especially when Wilkes did, other than the, missed call where Kyle had to call a timeout to change it, Wilkes did a reasonably good job in the Super Bowl. So there was clearly a lot of damage had been done leading up to that the decisions seems like it was maybe already made, barring a miracle or a win in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Bryant says you can't count the block against Moody. You absolutely can count the block because it wasn't that far of a field goal. Like on a really long field goal, you don't count a block because you got to drive it low to get enough distance to get there. But I think it was like a 30 or 40 yard field goal where you should be able to kick it up high and over any blocker's hands. And so I count the block, Bryant. I disagree. Like I said, if it had been further out 50, 60 yards, yeah, you don't count up those blocks because you're automatically the trajectory dictates that you're going to be more blockable that way. Kenny says CMC fumble that game. They robbed Oliver of a strip. The Bosa recovered. Yeah, that's true. That was one where, it's frustrating for sure. There was so many things. If one thing went our way, it could have been totally different. But as far as Staley, I'm not really wild about him. I was saying I wanted Mike Vrabel. I wasn't that wild, honestly, about Belichick. I think he's too old. I don't think he really wants a DC only role anyway. I'm not sure if Vrabel does either, to be honest. Another problem with like Vrabel and Belichick, and as we saw with Fangio, is that they're 3-4 guys, and we're a 4-3 personnel. So that would be a rub. So yeah, I mean, I think Dave Merritt makes a lot of sense. I think ultimately, we'll go internal. I think it'll end up being Bullock, probably the secondary coach, but maybe Sorensen. I don't know, but I think we will go internal. The only thing is like people say, oh, well, we went internal with D'Amico and he did great, but D'Amico was like a really stud linebacker, and was here in the organization for a number of years. I don't know how long Sorensen and Bullock have been there. Like, I'm pretty sure D'Amico was there as a linebacker because the whole time Sala was there, the whole 2 years. No, it was more than 2 years. There's 2 years of being good, but it was like, I guess Sala was there since 2017, right?
Yeah, and I think that D'Amico was too. Bullocks has been with the 49ers for a while. Sorensen, I think 2 seasons, but Bullocks has been there for a while. So we'll see.
Yeah, we will. No doubt about it. Bryant, always needling. I like Wilkes. Nice guy. No, he was a nice guy. He did a pretty good job. My biggest problem with Wilkes was just that he always defaulted to that sort of quasi-prevent defense, and then he would have to adjust away from it. And a lot of times he barely adjusted in time, and sometimes he didn't adjust in time. And so that was my biggest problem with him. O-line lost the Super Bowl. I've been wanting to invest in O-line for a long time.
Yeah.
Roberto, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of O-line. I've said all since the last offseason that our 2024 first-round pick should be an offensive tackle, whether we take it this year in the draft, or I thought maybe we might even trade for one at the trade deadline. But, McKivitz played well enough that we didn't have to trade, which is good. You'd much rather draft a young, cheap offensive tackle than trade for an older one who's probably, either overpriced or whatever. Most teams don't just let go of solid offensive tackles, it turns out. So, only Brandon Staley has actually called plays. Yeah, but how well did he do it? Aren't they like 30th or 31st, 32nd in the league?
Well, when he was with the Rams, they were the number one defense in the league. Yeah. But with the Chargers, and this isn't the first time that we've seen a good coordinator be a head coach and be terrible at it.
Yeah,
I don't remember when Vic Fangio went to Denver. I don't remember how good their defense was. But sometimes we see that where you have a guy who is a coordinator and his offense or defense is really good, and then he goes to be a head coach, and his offense, whatever his specialty is, whether it's offense or defense, is terrible. We sometimes see that, and I think that it's probably more about bad hires and bad game management and things like that. So
some of it is that they don't have control over the personnel too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So like in personnel with the Rams, Staley had some good personnel with Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, Ernest Jones. He's not a great linebacker, but he's good. They obviously had Jalen Ramsey. They had some, John Johnson, a really good safety who ended up going to the Browns and then coming back to the Rams. And some decent corners that have gone on to do pretty good things other places, I think, with the Jags and whatnot. But so he had a pretty loaded defense. That was a super team for sure, not just on offense, but maybe even more so on defense, that Rams team that won the Super Bowl. So because they obviously had Stafford and Kupp, but and OBJ.
Well, this was the year before. 2020 was when Staley was with the Rams, and then he left, and then they won the Super Bowl the next year. But when he was with the Rams in 2020, they had the number one defense in the league.
Yeah, they were really good, no doubt about it. Okay, thank you. Somehow I got that confused. I was a year off. Appreciate that.
Which is, he leaves and then they win the Super Bowl, but I don't think it was because he left.
Because they added Von Miller, they added
Matthew Stafford,
Stafford, Sony Michel, OBJ. Before OBJ was washed, he had some good, little bit of tread left on the tires at that point. All right. Anyway. Well, good. Well, hopefully we make the right decision at defensive coordinator. It's a really important position. Another thing that we should look at as we look at defensive coordinators is who's rah-rah, who's like a really fiery personality, because Saleh had it, D'Amico Ryans had it, Wilkes did not, Kyle does not, and so Kyle, I think, as his foil or his complement, needs somebody who's a little more rah-rah, because he's a little bit bookish. Let's be honest. He's great. I love him. Like you said, one of the best play designers, best play callers in the league, but he's a little bookish rather than like the, leader of men, man's man type of thing. So hopefully we get somebody more like Saleh and D'Amico Ryans from that perspective.
Yeah. And Bullocks may be more like that. I don't know about the others. Bullocks, he might be. I know the players. I've heard that the players really like him. So
nice. Well, I like the sound of that, and I do think they will go internal. I think just because they want someone who's going to run a 4-3, they want someone who's not going to blitz a lot, they want somebody who's going to have some continuity to the past, because it's not just Kyle wants this or Jed. It's like Fred and Bosa and Dre and Armstead and all the the guys that have been there for a while. I guess that's really it. But all those guys, are going to want something similar to what's been, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of thing. And obviously we didn't win a ring, so it isn't not broke enough to win a ring, but getting to 3 out of the last 4 Super Bowl, NFC championships in a Super Bowl in the last 4 years is pretty huge.
Still comes down to the players. I mean, that Wilkes called that zero blitz right before halftime against the Vikings, but Charvarius Ward had his hands on that ball. If he holds on, then maybe things turn out differently.
There you go. It's hard to argue against that for sure. Ebicom, Sebastian Joseph Day. Those are good, solid pieces. But yeah, when I was saying Von Miller, that definitely is not true in the 2020 season. I don't think we should go internal. We need to stop the Chiefs from winning their 3rd Super Bowl. Yeah, we do. I mean, that's why I said I want Dave Merritt from the Chiefs, but I think it'll be Bullocks. That's who it would be my guess. My heart really wants Vrabel, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So of the realistic choices, I'd say Dave Merritt from the Chiefs would be my heart, and head says Bullocks. Well, good. Well, Mark, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. Everybody, make sure you check out
pleasure.
Mark Adams on Twitter and X. It's at 49ers Camelot. The link to his YouTube channel is in the description for the show. Make sure you like and subscribe for him. Me too. Really helps us out to keep doing what we do for you guys. Daniel Berry says he subbed over there. Thank you. And Roberto Salazar says, help me understand if college is full of O-line players, there's a shortage in the NFL. Yeah, I think it's just that the college game is very different. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of RPO and not really traditional NFL concepts of play action and drop back passing, 5-7 step drops, and sit there. And so they're just not used to pass blocking in that way. Is I think really what it comes down to. But yeah, there's a huge shortage of really good offensive linemen coming. That's why you see whenever there's a good one, they go really high in the first round, like top 10, top 15. It's rare that a really good, consensus, really good O-lineman drops out of the top 15.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, at least for tackles. And then for centers, it's a little bit lower, and guards a little bit lower, typically. Like that's sort of the pecking order. But yeah, Mark, thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate it. You got anything going on that you want to promote? You mentioned the mailbag, any shows?
Just doing, just keep writing for 49ers Web Zone, and I'm starting to line up some off-season guests for the 49ers Camelot show. So go check that out. Hopefully starting next week. Been kind of laxed with it here the last couple of weeks, just trying to recover, and I've traveled some, and so getting ready to get back in and get things rolling.
All right, well, welcome back, and thanks for being on. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure. And like I said, Mark Adams at 49ers Camelot. Everybody like and subscribe. I'll just say peace and go Niners.